Hello there, gang, and welcome to another episode of Displaying Model Behaviour, the Earth's mightiest action figure video podcast. So take off your pants, crack a beer, and let's talk toys. Let's talk toys and comics. Let's talk about chronologically reading the entire run of The Amazing Spider-Man. Yeah, that's what we're doing, and it's starting right now with Amazing Fantasy 15. I'm going to go through it. I'm going to comically critique some elements of it. I'm going to talk about what is still incredible storytelling to this day. And I'm also going to show you what figures go with the various characters as they appear. I think this might be an amazing journey, and it's going to start right now. So, of course, we have to start with Amazing Fantasy 15, the first ever appearance of Spider-Man. The front cover being a collaboration between Jack Kirby and Steve Ditko. Absolutely must have blown people away when they first saw it in the 60s. This was 1962. You gotta think about how long ago that was. And we didn't have any superhero who quite looked like this. Such a bombastic front cover immediately sets the tone. And you can just remember Stan Lee telling all those stories about how he created Spider-Man and how he would say, I was sitting in my office and I was thinking, what would be a great superhero? Maybe Fly Guy or Mosquito Man. And then I saw this little spider on the wall and I thought, Spider-Man. And the rest is history. Folks, we're off to the races. So we open up and we see Peter Parker immediately. What a freaking loser. And that's kind of adorable that already he's not this great cool jock mad about town with superpowers. They're trying to make the character relatable. And hey, what's more relatable for comic book readers, myself included, than someone who maybe doesn't quite fit in? Especially someone who doesn't know a cha-cha from a waltz. What a loser. Even the ladies are like, oh, that Peter, he's a professional wallflower. I am going to love going through some of these 60s images, styles, references, and bear in mind, anything I make fun of is purely with all the love in the world. Of course it's going to be wacky and goofy. It was 50, 60 years ago, but it's still a lot of fun to, well, kind of affectionately poke fun at. And even though Peter has a rough time at school, we see what a beautiful, loving home he has with Aunt May and Uncle Ben. And initially, first of all, of course, we got to say it, those two are way too old. Grandparents, maybe? Yes. Great aunt and great uncle? I'll buy that. But Aunt May and Uncle Ben being this elderly couple that they are, that was never going to last for long. They had to de-age them, or at least de-age May since she was still alive. It's crazy that it took until sort of really modern day to get a younger Aunt May, but that definitely fits the whole timeline chronology so much better. So we go back to school and we see Peter being this academically gifted kid who seems to have a nice personality on him, but the other folks at the school are just not interested. Although we do see that maybe he does actually push his luck a bit too much with the ladies. We see him going over and asking this girl out and she's like,
geez, for the umpteenth time, Peter, no means no.
It's like, geez, Peter, you do realize that no does actually mean no. I mean, I know we're in the 60s and all, but you got to accept a woman's right to say that she doesn't want to go out on a date with you, dude. Especially, I mean, look at you. State of that sweater, mate. Although she is a bit mean when she's like, why would I want to go out with you when there are dreamboats like Flash in this school? And of course we get Flash Thompson, who we still need an action figure for. Yes, we've got Agent Venom, but come on. The jock high school bully, that's a Flash Thompson I'd like on the shelf. So Peter, having been spurned once again, skulks off, and he actually has some quite frightening dialogue. Someday I'll show them. Someday they'll be sorry. Sorry they laughed at me, he aggressively says while walking towards the radiation exhibit. If that's not a supervillain origin story, I don't know what is. And of course, during this very dangerous radiation exhibit or display or experiment or whatever the heck they were doing, in the high school, Peter gets bitten by an irradiated spider. And of course, more modern Spider-Man comics would ask the question, did the spider get irradiated, which then allowed it to give its powers to Peter before dying? Or was the spider on its way to give Peter its powers, and then it got caught by the radiation, which then killed it? That is the question. Is it prophecy, or is it a dumb coincidence? Who knows? You decide. It was a dumb coincidence. But still, another interesting little aside is that at this exhibit was also one Cindy Moon, who also got bitten by the spider, although with the sliding timescale that makes sense. In the 1960s, I don't think they would have had a South Korean student in the same high school as Peter Parker and all the other kids, just because I'm pretty sure that segregation it wasn't fully ended until after this comic came out, which again is mind-blowing to think of how much the world has changed and how crazy things were back in even just the 60s. That's kind of bonkers. Now, unfazed by the spider bite, Pete walks outside and is almost hit by a car. He jumps out of the way of this car, crushes a pipe as he does so, and is like, wow, something has changed. So Peter decides that he's going to use his powers to try and earn some money, and thus enters a wrestling match with some dude who looks like a complete Roidy Magoo. Not Bonesaw McGraw, but Crusher Hogan. And Peter absolutely embarrasses him and claims his money. And again, this is a very 60s thing, I guess. They probably still had some of those tough man contests where you could just turn up at a place and be like, yeah, I'll fight this guy. These days, if you tried doing that in the WWE, I think you'd probably get dogpiled into oblivion before the commentators could even say something insufferable. Then after the match, he's met by a classic caricature type person from the 60s of this producer with a hat and the little moustache and the cigar. And he's like, I'm a producer, kid. I work for the Ed Sullivan Show. We're going to get you on TV. Big, big money. You're going to be a huge, huge star. So Peter goes home and immediately starts creating this guise as the Spider-Man. He puts together his web shooters. He creates the webbing itself. And it's great that he references that being a bookworm is suddenly working out for him. He manages to magically whip up a badass Spider-Man costume, because why the heck not? It's comic books. People can do that. And he tells us on the final panel, okay, world, better hang on to your hat, because here comes the Spider-Man. I just realized, here comes the Spider-Man. That's where the theme tune comes from. I didn't realize. There you go. That's why I'm doing this. I think there's a lot of fun little tidbits we're going to find out for the first time. Look out, here comes the Spider-Man. Opening up part 2, we have our first big shot of Spider-Man looking resplendent as he crawls down the wall of the TV studio. The people in the audience aghast as he uses his webbing to put out a candle. What you didn't see was the previous panel where they were all similarly aghast when he was able to use a lighter to create fire from his hand. He's a witch! Burn him! Again, people were easily entertained in the 60s. Then after the show, we get that iconic Spider-Man origin moment where a burglar is running down the hall. The people are all saying, hey, stop that guy, he stole my money. And Spider-Man's like, hey, what's up? There you go. And the funny thing is, unlike in other origin tales, Spider-Man hadn't been wronged. Like the classic one from the Maguire movie is where he gets shortchanged and the promoter's like, tell me where that's my problem. And then you get that great little comeback where the guy's like, hey, that guy stole my money. You could have stopped him, but you didn't. And Maguire's like,
I missed the part where that's my problem.
So Peter's star continues to rise, all the newspaper headlines, who is the Spider-Man? Life is good until one day, and bear in mind, this is very compressed storytelling. This is taking place in like the space of 2 panels, you know. That's why I love these comics from the 60s. Peter gets bitten by the spider and discovers his spider powers like all in the space of 1 page. You gotta love that. So Peter finishes up a show, he comes home to find the place surrounded by police, and a cop comes up to him and he says, I'm sorry kid, there was a burglary, your uncle tried to stop him, he was shot. Your Uncle Ben's dead. And very nicely of the cop, he reassures Peter that don't worry, we're going to catch him because he's in the old Acme warehouse. I wonder when people stopped using Acme as like the go-to generic brand name for everything. It's an Acme anvil or an Acme dynamite rocket kit. He was in the Acme warehouse. A little bit of pub trivia for you there if they ever ask, where did Peter catch the burglar? Acme warehouse. So Peter whips on the Spider-Man costume, swings out there for sweet, sweet revenge. Now we go over to the warehouse, and in a funny kind of line, like, I sort of know what they meant, but the burglar says to himself, I'm gonna hide out here till the moon goes down and it'll be dark enough for me to escape. And I was like, but when the moon goes down, that's because the sun's coming up, dude. If the moon's up, then it's not gonna get any darker, pal. The moon goes down, the sun comes up. It's physics.
Not a great plan.
And Spider-Man, in some really effective, cool, creepy poses and artwork, stalks the burglar and attacks. Knocking him to the ground, Peter gets a close look at the villain's face, and of course, that face, it's... Oh no, it can't be. It's the fugitive who ran past me. The one I didn't stop when I had the chance. And we also get the rare instance of the Spider-Man mask pupils. And I'm so glad this was probably just a one-off. I mean, obviously they're not meant to be his eyes, but I guess, Ditko thought, well, maybe I'll put a couple of dots so we can kind of like envision like his expression, but nah, I think it looks a little bit weird. I'm glad they kind of dropped that. And as Peter deals with this revelation, we see the police captain outside, and he's saying, we're going to have to rush him now. We can't have him slipping away when it gets darker. Again, it's nighttime. It's not getting any darker.
Not a great plan.
Of course, Spider-Man saves them the effort, dropping the burglar down on one of his spider webs. Again, an iconic Spider-Man move, the first time we've ever seen it, webbing up the villain and leaving them for the police. And of course, we all love a great tragedy, and this comic ends on a real heartbreaking note. My fault. All my fault. If only I'd stopped him when I could have, but I didn't. And now Uncle Ben is dead.
And a lean, silent figure slowly fades into the gathering darkness, aware at last that in this world, with great power, there must also come great responsibility. And so a legend is born, and a new name is added to the roster of those who make the world of fantasy the most exciting realm of all.
The end. Wow, I really enjoyed doing that. I actually haven't read Amazing Fantasy 15 cover to cover ever, I think. What a wonderful experience. Only 800 plus more issues to go. More than that. We're nearing 1,000 now, so whew, this series might last for a while. But guys, thank you so much for watching. Did you enjoy this? Is there something you want to see more of? Because I think in the next issue, we're going to meet the Fantastic Four. We're going to meet the Chameleon. Then after that, we got Dr. Octopus. There's a whole lot of stuff to cover. And I'm going to enjoy doing it with you. So folks, thanks for watching. And until next time, keep displaying model behavior.
Coffee.